Do you remember your school?
I do remember my school. It was a girls' grammar school, and it was called Roundhay High School.
Okay.
And we wore navy blue tunics and navy blue knickers and a navy blue beret. Do you want more?
The only thing I didn't like about school is on a Thursday morning it was maths, and I hate maths. And I always tried to not go into school on Thursday mornings by going around doing things in the, when I get up in the morning. And then my father would get on to me and said that you have to get ready now for school, because the teacher was so strict. Because one of the things he used to say, putting out the maths, I teach once and for all. So that means you have to do the work. And
so I guess if you didn't understand anything, that would make
you couldn't even go to ask him, really.
Yeah. So that must have made you feel quite angry.
Frightened. I mean, scared. I was scared about that, to be honest.
Can you describe any time where you challenged a figure of authority?
No. Apart from a few discrepancies, I think I was a good girl. I didn't want to upset my parents. Have you ever rebelled, and what about?
Well, a couple of times, and it was in school, actually. So, in the summer, because we have really strict uniform. I wouldn't say it's that strict.
Do you object to wearing uniform then?
Well, we had to wear during the summer, even if it's in the summer, we're not allowed to wear shorts. We still have to wear our blazer, and we still have to wear all this polyester.
Even in the heat of summer?
Yeah, so what I would do is I would just take my blazer off, whether or not I was allowed, and so, even if they told me to put it on,
I'm passing out like some of the soldiers.
Yeah, and then I see some of my friends and they're just wearing blazers and jumpers and in the middle of summer. And then I just wonder how they can do it.
Maybe there was a time when we had a cover teacher and the whole class went wild, like chairs were flying, paper was flying, it was crazy. And I got taken out of the class for something else. And the head teacher came around and I was like, I wasn't involved, I got taken out of the class. So there's no way, you can come and tell me off for what's just happened in there. So that was like kind of me trying to like really get my point across.
When did you move here to the UK?
I came here when I was 18.
Okay. What's the story behind that?
Came to meet my boyfriend.
Okay. Where's he from?
Same place.
Okay.
Do you think that there have been many rebellious acts in your lifetime?
Well, I'm more of the more cynical, piss-taking type of action I am, really, than doing anything very serious. I always look for the joke.
Right. Well, I didn't rebel when I was 16, but I sure did rebel when I was 12. But there was a good reason for that. My parents decided for my health we should move to Wales. I like Wales. I even like the Welsh. But unfortunately, the Welsh thought we were hilarious. They thought it was hilarious the way we spoke. And when I went to school, they used to crowd around me. They used to encircle me and keep making me say things. And when I said them, they would just fold up laughing. Literally, it was absolutely hilarious for them. But they bugged me day in and day out until basically I couldn't stand it anymore. So I absconded. I hopped the wag.
I think as a young child I wasn't very rebellious, but I think when I got to about 14 I was a bit disaffected by school, and it was I would push the boundaries over clothing.
At school, it was just happy because I was brought up in a village, and it was more or less a family, and the memories were very, very happy indeed.
Do you feel like you had a voice when you lived there?
We didn't have a voice as children because you are not supposed to talk back to parents. They wouldn't have that, because that means you would be a really rude child.
I did all right in school academically, but I think there was quite a lot of times when I got pretty bored and fed up. And certainly in secondary school, in the school I went to, I quite quickly got on the wrong side of quite a few teachers because I didn't like the uniform. Caps, there was a cap with a huge peak on it. And you had to have trousers of a certain width with turn-ups. And I had a Latin master that quite frequently would put me on top of a desk and measure the bottom of my trousers to see if they were regulations, and they invariably weren't. So I got into quite a lot of detention and stuff for that kind of thing.
I hated the uniform, and when I was about 16, we started wearing our skirts shorter and shorter, and you used to roll up the waistband so that your skirt was above your knees. And then they did tests. You had to sit in a row. You had to kneel in a row, and if your skirt was above your knees, you had to go home. So you'd roll the skirt down from your waistband so it was long enough, and then as soon as you went away, you rolled it up again.
Do you recall my eldest brother telling me that my skirt was too short and he could see my knickers, but my skirt was on my knees? So I didn't take much notice of that. I continued to wear my skirt on my knees.
When I was younger, I felt a lot more reserved because I felt almost in the shadow of my brother, who was very loud and outspoken. But I feel like now that I'm older, I have the opportunity to be more confident.
So I was the only baby of the family. So of course with 4 brothers, I was sort of on a pedestal. And my brothers used to have a band, a group, in the 70s. And I only ever went to one of their gigs once. And all the chaps around and that, all the boys around and that, they weren't allowed to speak to me because I was their sister. So I was sort of cosseted, like, you know.
I think when I was younger, I was a lot more reserved than I am now. And my secondary school experience made me a lot more outspoken. So I guess a lot of the things that I was interested in during secondary school were the statements of rebellion. And so, like, I like to play sport, I like music, I like art, and a lot of the time people would be like to me, oh, like, you shouldn't do that, that's not ladylike, or that's not very feminine of you. And then there'll be times when my dad would be like, no, I don't want you playing football, like, I don't want you to, that's like a man sport. And so I guess a lot of the things that I was interested in, and still am interested in, are statements of rebellion.
Well, there was a kid in my school who, because boys aren't allowed to wear shorts, he came into school in a skirt for summer, so, and there was no rule against it because obviously girls can wear skirts, so you couldn't say guys can wear skirts as well. And that was quite nice. And he made everyone sign a petition to allow boys to wear shorts, and like half the school signed it, but the school didn't let it happen. But it was still like a really cool thing to do.
Did you have any rebellious moments when you were younger?
No, I was a good girl. Even if I was born in, when I was a teenager in the swinging 60s, and the mini skirts and all that, I was still a good girl.
Sadly, it was rebelling against my mum, I think, when I was about 10 or 11.
So were you a troublemaker in school?
Yes-ish, yes.
Yes-ish. What happened?
I talked too much. I talked all the time. I talked in lessons, in assembly, when you're supposed to stand in line going in and out of the playground. So I was always pulled out and put in detention. I still talk too much.
So, can you remember a first time you said no to something?
Yeah, if I wanted something and they refused to give it to me, I mean, I sort of put my foot in it saying, yes, I want this and I need to have it. I mean, most time I was lucky enough to have it, really.
Have you ever been involved in any riot or protest?
Any
riots or protests?
Riots? Good God, no. Right. I don't suppose at your age you've been involved in a riot or a disagreement or something, have you?
No, but my dad did encourage me to go to the Brexit march that happened, I think, a couple of months ago. And I was going to go with my mum, but
do you at your age fully understand?
Well, yeah, I'm kind of, my dad's told me all these things, and I'm not really liking it because most of the time when I get older, I know that in terms of travel, it's going to be much harder, and that's the kind of thing I want to do when I'm older.
You like the freedom of it?
Yeah.
That's right. I remember going to a Labour Party meeting some time ago, and I asked Harriet Harman why it is that she's been a Labour member for Southwark for all these years, and why it was she didn't have enough confidence to send her children to Labour authority schools. And you could have cut the atmosphere in the room with a knife when I said that, because everybody said I shouldn't ask a private question like that, a personal question. That was beyond the pale. But I thought it was a reasonable question to ask.
And I think it was when I got to university I started to experiment with life in a different way, because I had a lot of freedom that I had never had before.
How did this make you feel?
I think I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun and I made friends, and I learned a lot about, I got worried about social problems at that time. There was a lot of poor housing, nothing changes much, more social deprivation than there is now. And I became more political and got involved in demos. I liked going on demos.
I suppose most of the things I felt strongly about were outside of school, so I went on quite a lot of demonstrations around Grosvenor Square where the American Embassy is because of the Vietnam War. And I went more recently, I've been involved with miners in the 80s and the miners' strike and stuff like that. And then squatting was a big issue in the 70s. And I joined a group that occupied a building called Centre Point, which is opposite Tottenham Court Road. And that was both, I suppose, an act of rebellion, but it was very empowering for us to work out how we get past security and occupy this building for a whole weekend and get quite a lot of coverage for it.
What does the word rebellion mean to you?
Well, you talk back to them, what you feel they say to you that you don't like, and we weren't allowed to do that.
Doing something you didn't want to do or what you thought was right.
Just speaking out about what you believe is right and not being afraid of others' views.
Rebellion means fighting against what society deems to be normal, what you don't necessarily agree with, and making sure that your opinion is heard.
Like being outspoken or going against societal norms.
I suppose it means questioning, really. It means not accepting everything that you're told. And when you feel strongly enough about something, then doing something about it.
How do you deal with difference or disagreements?
How do I deal with them? Yeah. Well, I just take it that you're entitled to your opinion and I'm entitled to mine. So that is a disagreement, isn't it? Differences of opinion. But I would never knock your reasoning, so long as you don't knock mine.
Did you guys have any kids?
Did I have children?
Yeah. How was raising them?
Terrible. The children are always hard, innit? You should know.
Yeah.
It's not a piece of cake, is it?
Last year at school, this lady came in to talk to us about her life and how she'd kind of gone through these difficulties to get where she was. And the next day in our tutor time, everyone was saying, "Oh, she was so boring. I was falling asleep." And I'm quite quiet at school, I guess. I don't speak out, but I was I thought it wasn't fair because she had told us a lot of personal stories, so I kind of said no. She was interesting and you just need to give people a chance to explain their story.